We will be talking, a lot of the technologies here are kind of things that you guys relied on for your own projects. But let's begin with some sizzle, let people see exactly what we're talking about. So we have a quick little sizzle reel. So let me ask a question here. So one of your on-air talents says this, one of the race tracks, you just have to be there, you have to experience it. So was he was actually there, right? Was he off tube? Do you know?
Yeah, RF, yes. He was on site.
He was, okay, good. So at least he was there.
Yes, so for a small handful of the IMSA events that we did this year, the opening season Rolex and the Petit Le Mans final race, the announce booth talent were actually on site.
Gotcha.
For the rest of the series, they were in the control room in Charlotte.
Okay, that's why he was so excited to be on site. He was like, yay. So let's go with brief introductions. Mark, would you like to tell us a little about your role at NASCAR and within these productions?
I'm Mark Hull, Senior Manager of Technical Operations for NASCAR Productions. My main role in this is the tech manager on site since we started inception of doing, we call them at-homes. 3 years ago, I guess we started doing these.
Matt Stovcsik, Senior Director of Operations. I'm kind of the go-between between the site and the control room in Charlotte and the broadcast partners that we're working with and our internal clients of just trying to pull all the pieces and parts and have helped in the development of when we started this several years ago, the first idea, and bringing it up to what we've been doing today.
Mike?
I'm Mike Zylak. I'm the Senior Manager of Engineering at NASCAR Productions. I'm responsible for the facility side, bringing those feeds into the facility, putting them into control rooms, and building the production out for the producers' needs.
Excellent, great. Okay, so let's start with the basics. A lot of people in the room probably not familiar with exactly what the workflow is. So when did you start this? You mentioned 3 years ago. So how did this kind of come to be? We obviously have the big mothership, the big massive races that are on Fox and NBC. So where did this kind of project develop?
We're in an interesting position that we are both the league and a packager for some of our partners. And we also deal with some of the non-top NASCAR Cup Series events, ARCA, IMSA, and some others. And there's definitely budget constraints with those other packages. So it started with ARCA several years ago. They came to us and said, how do we do this for less? So we just kind of going through, what do we need on site? How do we cut costs? And for us, the biggest thing is people, the travel and expense of people being on site. And when you get to a scale of that point, that percentage of personnel not being on site was the motivator to start and continue down the path that we've gone.
So obviously, each of the races are different. You saw it there. There's different types of tracks and what have you. So how did the philosophy kind of evolve from 3 years ago to where you were this year? And I guess how many events, races did you do this year from Charlotte?
This past year, we had about 30 races total, from road courses for the IMSA series to small little ovals for ARCA with some truck series and Xfinity series events mixed in there as well. And it's been an evolution from, again, the ARCA race was a quarter-mile track with 4 track cameras, a couple of onboard cameras, and an RF camera. And then we took a step with IMSA, again, the same budget constraints. We're looking for some cost savings. How do we do things for less? How do we be more advantageous with our dollars? And the first year we did IMSA was we called it a world feed style. We actually produced a world feed on site, line cut, some replays with a TD and director on site, and then just added to that back in the Charlotte control room with another set of production personnel, talent on site, more replays, and then all the graphics, and transition to what we've been doing the last few years, which is cameras and audio on site and everything else back in the building.
Right. So walk through those conversations and decisions. So how many people let's walk through the facilities. In Charlotte, on a race day, what's sort of fired up in terms of facilities? How many people are there? And then how are they communicating with the people at the track? So I guess sort of like what's a typical REMI day or at-home day for you?
Sure. In Charlotte, TD, director, producer, AD on the front bench. We do graphics, and our ticker folks from SMT are on the back bench as well, an A1. We have an A2 that deals with our booth and our talent upstairs in our booth, and then coordinates with the booth there to the site talent, because we usually have 2 to 3 pit reporters for some of the bigger IMSA races that we do. And then just engineering personnel, and we also kind of have a unique beast that we have to tackle in that we are also the downlink, so we're bringing in these feeds via fiber satellite through different mediums into a transmissions room where they'll have to be broken out into IRDs and put into the proper control room. So that's kind of the gist of the workflow.
Right, gotcha. And this year there's a new truck from NEP, right, I guess, at the on-site, the new facility?
Correct. The first year, well, regular, I believe it was SS4 we had. Now they built an Alpha truck, totally REMI truck, no switcher, no graphics, no tape room, no EVS on site, capable of 22 cameras. Our normal's about 10 or 11 hard cameras. We do up to 16 man cameras at a time, plus 14 onboards. So on site, you'll have obviously camera operators. We'll have an A1 since these shows are very comms intensive. CalRec Alpha for our audio board. Usually 1 or 2 field A2s, 2 video guys, RF camera operators, some utilities, and really that's about it, engineers.
So how do they, because some of these tracks, they're not all ovals, it's not all left-hand turns, right? There are some right-hand turns occasionally. So how do those meetings go, the camera meetings? Because some of those shows are pretty big also. So I'm always curious on how those kind of things go off without people saying like, yeah, you know, who cares, they're in Charlotte, you know.
That was probably the biggest thing to get through. Technically, we pulled it off pretty good, I think. Our first show we did in Daytona several years ago, we knew we were going to have problems with the camera guys because in racing, they watch the returns a lot. And they'll have a stats feed, they'll have a program feed, and you know, very long, when they're watching the camera in front of them, that's their pickup point. So that you can't have much delay there, especially when the objects went 200 miles an hour. So, and we had a second and a half our first year. It was our first delay, and the camera guys were just pitching a fit. And so I took the lead guy in the uplink truck and I showed it, because they were saying, oh, it's 4 or 5 seconds. Like, no, it's not. It's the second half. So I took him to the uplink truck, showed him that. He goes, okay. I said, it will improve from that. So he went out and spread the word. So we didn't hear much more from them. The director took a little longer for them to get used to it. And I think that's part of one of the at-home problems you'll have now is production doesn't want to let go, especially the old school guys. Right. You know, they like having their camera guys there. They're their people. And you're right, the camera meetings are a little different. It's on headset. You know, nothing else.
Although all races, what's interesting is, and the hardest thing to me from a REMI standpoint would be that the storytelling is not follow the ball and the ball is the story, which a lot of sports, usually the ball is sort of the story. Whereas anyone who watches racing knows a lot of times, you know, the biggest, most important thing is what's happening up in third and fourth place.
Correct.
As far as, so how do you, is it hard then for communications to make sure that everybody's on the same page because it is such a very fluid story?
Well, if you think about it, it's really not much different when they're on site because they're, you know, and that's one thing. Our studio, the booth announcers, they didn't need to be in a booth anyway. They can't see the track. They're looking at monitors. They don't see the track, so they, you know, they wouldn't know the difference. You can put them in Charlotte or in the compound.
Right.
Yeah, they don't know. But camera operators still, I mean, they communicate with the director, you know, and spotters. We generally don't have many spotters, but really, once you get past that mindset of being 1,000 miles away, there's really not much difference.
Right. And that was probably the biggest selling point for the announcers was, okay, you're not in an office trailer sitting over here in the compound because you have the same monitoring there that you're going to have in the building. And what we've developed those announce booth setups to be is it's 6 or 60-inch monitors that we put a whole lot more stuff that they could ever possibly have at the track. That they have multi-viewers that they can see all the camera feeds if they want to. Scoring pages are big so they can read them and they don't have to worry about blocking their view to the outside.
No glare from the light outside. Windows.
Exactly. So it's now they come in and they see what they have, and it's like, oh, this is great. So.
Yeah, let's start with the people, then we'll get on some of the technical stuff too. But because I've heard this, I was talking to Steve Stum, who obviously plays a little bit of a role at NASCAR, and he was saying how, at first there is the resistance, but then all of a sudden people kind of say, wait, you know what? I go home to sleep in a bed at night with my family, as we like to say. For some people, that's a good thing. For some people, the divorce rates could go up or go down depending on whether you like to be on the road or not. But walk through that the cultural changes within the team as far as working at home and embracing it, and those who haven't embraced it.
Yeah, it is the getting out of the mindset for a lot of the people that have been and outside of these packages still on the road a lot. Being able to walk into a facility that they just sit down and do their job. From an engineering standpoint, the truck is always built. There is no strike at the end of the night. There is no call for power cables when we're done. It's turn off the light switch. So once they got into that pattern of doing them and walking away and, oh, that show was fine, now they're looking forward to it. So and I think from the field side, it's also, there aren't as many people to deal with on the field for Mark as the tech manager.
No production people at all. No director, producer. It's fantastic.
He's being sarcastic.
Yes, I love it.
So one thing, when I was speaking with the folks at NEP Australia, so for example, in Sydney, they had their I want to say it was the soccer crew, but they were doing, so there's like 9 stadiums that they would usually go to within the driving distance of an hour from, and they realized, at first they were like, well, you know what, it's only an hour away, why don't I still just drive there? And then they realized, you know what, it's much better not having to go to, especially a track, on race day, let aside the striking afterwards, but then the traffic is just going in and out. So like when you do the other races in the Charlotte Motor Speedway where you're sort of doing it from remote, or you say, hey, it's close enough, let's go on to the track?
Actually, some of the races that we have done have been Charlotte races, because it's part of the package that we're doing. So for the ARCA series, why do that one different than everything else? So everybody still comes to the building and does the event.
Right. And then as far as so let's go to the technical challenges. So and the evolution here. So where has it come as far as things like latency? You mentioned fiber and satellite, because it was originally satellite, correct?
Correct. And we still have events that we're doing over satellite.
Yeah,
so
okay.
That was the biggest challenge of the entire thing was for IMSA. These are 1 to 4 mile road courses, a lot of them. So anywhere from 6 to 12 to 14 on-track cameras, plus RFs, plus onboards. And with IMSA, the manufacturers are part of the funding of everything. So that was key, that we had to have 14 onboard cameras for that series. Now we're up to 28 video paths. Well, how do we get that all back? So that was where PSSI came in and helped us develop that scheme, and we're pushing boundaries that hadn't been pushed before, as far as amount of bandwidth over satellite getting back to a control room. So now that we've done that, and a lot of places now we've moved to fiber, and we have fiber installed at these facilities, but there's still a few that we have to do over satellite. So we still have that workflow, and we're still using those events to push the boundaries and test, and how can we do it different?
Mm-hmm. Does it impact does the team have to know, okay, this is over satellite, this is over fiber, or is it pretty much similar at this point as far as issues?
Sometimes it's better that we don't tell them.
Yeah. Well, and we still, with the fiber tracks, our main transmission is fiber, but we still have a satellite truck there for backup. Now, we can't do it as elaborate as push as much data, but we can do the show, and almost as well. But then you bring into comms, that's another thing. First, we started on phone lines, and then we've moved to, IP, and so we've gotten that latency latencycycyy down too, because at Daytona this year, last year too, we have 17 announcers on site. We have 14 announced positions that can go live at any time. So that's quite a few. All have separate IFP, talk back and everything.
So I know that earlier in the panel with the remote production vendors, executives, they're saying how, the big shows will still probably, be done on site and the REMIs won't. But, when I talk to Formula One, I think they have a vision of obviously they fly around 2 jumbo jets for their TV production. But they're looking at potentially saying, let's keep people at home and do things as much as possible remotely. So what do you see as is there, and you have some great partners with Fox and NBC, so maybe you don't want to, change that relationship, and they love the way they're doing their shows. So what's your sense on the roadmap forward? Could this go to more shows, more races?
Well, I think with racing and all the series that we work on, whether it's Cup Series or IMSA or whatever, is that we're not just covering the race. We also have multiple lower series that either we're doing line cuts or productions for our current partners, or somebody saying, hey, we have this series, we have this little streaming package, can you do a line cut for us? Practices, qualifying. If there's cars moving, we're covering it. Sometimes it's just for race control, but we still have to have everything functioning and working for 3 days, not just showing up to do 1 3-hour game. But it's also the other components of NASCAR that, and IMSA and in our league role that we're expanding on. So it's this year for the Cup events, the actual big screen productions we'll be doing from a control room in Charlotte. It's because we're sending video back, is using that for some of our officiating, or executives to be able to sit in the control room in somewhere and not have to go to track. So that's our vision, is more than just the broadcast stuff. It's all the other components that we have as a league have to deliver to a bunch of different departments.
Because I'm guessing that the big screen production for a lot of these tracks probably don't have a big fancy control room already in them, right? I mean,
it's a blend, and they've been doing it out of a production truck that we have been a part of for many years. But it's that scale of people that have to travel to the track. So their total group is maybe 10 individuals. Well, now 5 or 6 of them can stay in Charlotte. So that percentage of their travel budget is immense. So that's their big savings.
And then as far as so for the next step so that's for next season, right? So when's next February?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. So and what's been the reaction from just the entities involved, as far as are they loving this, as far as this is meeting checking all the boxes for budget savings, cost savings? Are they happy where it's at? Do they want even more cost savings? I mean, they clearly do. Everybody does. But what's been their reaction so far?
I think it's been positive. And in fact, in the Petit Le Mans video, you saw an aerial shot. Oh, that was part of the development of the process with IMSA in particular. Is yes, we needed to save a lot of money, but they also wanted to be able to apply those dollars to other resources. So because we saved X amount of dollars, we could put dollars back in for aerial, because for them that was important.
Right. It's funny because you see that at the Olympics. When you go to the Olympics, one of the goals for OBS is to have a less people in the IBC. But what's happening is people will keep they'll keep the technical people home, but then they'll bring out six extra reporters, 5 more E&G crews. So the goal is to really kind of put the money, I guess, where it really makes the biggest difference in front of viewers, which is visibly seeing and changing the story. And aerial shots is obviously a great thing for racing. So, and then as far as, so let's roll through again. So how many people typically are working number-wise at home and then versus on the road? And how does your engineering staff work? Are they comfortable being divorced from the production? Well, I guess you said they like it. So, no, sorry, he sarcastically said that they like it. What's the sense of their workflows of the engineering team on site?
I mean, we have 14 to 16 people working in the production side of things at home. The engineering staff is comprised of an EIC like you would have on a mobile unit. I have an E2 as well, and I also have someone in transmissions bringing those feeds in and also providing our final product to NBC or Fox or whoever our partner is. So that's kind of the makeup of the facility side of things. I think it's been really positive. I think the challenges that we've encountered really on the engineering side have been communications. Being able to get our talent on site to talk to our talent in the facility and understanding the delay and getting them to understand the delay and then working with them to make that less and less. And as we go towards a lot of these tracks having fiber optics, it really changes everything, because with fiber, we can increase our bandwidth so easily now to be able to send feeds back to site, like a J2K feed for camera return, so the camera guys aren't having that problem of that second and a half delay, and it brings it kind of evolves from satellite, where it made it a little bit more difficult at times.
Right. Excellent. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. We're actually going to do a hard turnover, so nobody move. We're going to talk cybersecurity within a compound, which I'm sure you guys deal with as well as you do these kind of productions. So I wanted to turn it over to Tom Sahara and the next group. So Tom, come on down. And thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you.